This is the Shattering the Taboo podcast. Let's change the paradigm together with your hosts, Austin, Aesthetics, and Bebe Chez.
All right, everybody, welcome to Shattering the Taboo podcast, episode 1, the intro episode with ZenApe. Glad to have everybody here, and let's get into it with Bebe Chubbs.
And of course, my boy Aesthetics, Jaime. Jaime, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm glad that we have Austin in the room as well. If you guys could just share out this space, click the light blue button on the bottom right. We will get into it.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity.
Okay, so I guess the idea behind this is that as I've lived, I've always noticed that what I thought was real turned out not to be what I thought. And there isn't a lack of information in the world. If anything, there's too much information, and for the most part, a lot of information that throws us off, whether it's in health, whether it's in finance, whether it's in other areas like spirituality or medicine. We're gonna delve on any topic that we feel that there is misunderstanding or misconceptions, to try to create an environment of free thinkers that can really do one thing: sit, rest, and be receptive. Allow the information to flow through you. Analyze, reflect, meditate on it. Do your own research and see if you come to the same conclusion. What holds people back is their beliefs and preconceptions, many of which are often misguided and keep them from being able to reach their potential. And it's not about being an unfiltered censor. Always hold a certain level of skepticism. Nobody's perfect. And of course, we have to remain humble and understand that we leave a small door open for the possibility that maybe it's not true, and that somebody else may know something that I don't. That way, if I leave that door open, no matter how high I think I've reached the summit, there's always a little farther I can go, and there's always somebody that can give you that little nudge up so that you can reach higher peaks.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of my teachers would agree too. They call themselves lifelong learners, lifelong students, even as a teacher, because they're still learning, even though they're up on that high summit. They know they don't know all the answers. And I agree with you that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And that's something I hope to contribute to this community through this podcast, is to help these listeners think for themselves and help people ask the questions. Like, whenever someone provides you information, you have to ask yourself, why are they giving me this information? Why are they taking their time to promote this? What do they have to gain by giving me this information? What are they trying to persuade me on? What are they trying to influence me on with this information? And then you can kind of see behind the scenes whether they're legit or it's something you really want to look into. And especially on these taboo topics, we'll be going over like psychedelics, drugs, these certain therapies and other medicines. There's a lot of misinformation and propaganda pushed on the media to demonize some of these things and make them look straight out evil when they can actually benefit people and help them. So if you just go off what the media or the so-called authorities say on some of these things, you can have it all backwards and be missing out on something really good.
Yeah, I think that open dialogue is super important in the process of growth. Hearing contrary perceptions to things that you have held on to for a long time can be difficult. And the process of growth can also be difficult as well. But it's through that pain, through that process of continuing to learn and unlearn things that are detrimental and learn things that are helpful in continuing to expand your consciousness and state of being. We'd like to just continue to be here and supportive of everyone who wants to partake in that process. So I think that's the goal of the podcast in general.
Hey
Monks, how are you,
guys.
sir? Is that Minnie?
Yeah, hey, sorry, I'm driving to work at the moment, but a question that I've always had is, so obviously you have the ability to make lifestyle choices that can affect, your longevity and the wellness of your life. So how much power do you have in overcoming hereditary problems and things that from your parents' lifestyle have passed over to you in your genetics?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. There are epigenetic effects. So, what your parents may have done can actually be reflected in you. There is no 100% I'm destined to have something. So, for example, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're referring to, but there are women that inherit the possibility, for example, that they could have breast cancer. It's about a 50% chance or so. It's pretty high. And women like Angelina Jolie, who did have this genetic predisposition, you could call it, she chose to have her breast removed, breast tissue, because she didn't want any chance that that would happen. But in fact, even if I were to have a genetic predisposition for a condition, it doesn't necessarily mean that I will develop it. I could have a family member that maybe had Alzheimer's disease, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I would get it. I have been on record as stating, based on research that I did while I was at Yale, that in fact, that is related to a lifetime of stress. Two huge key players in a lot of conditions that manifest and in my vulnerability to a lot of diseases. It's not just environmental and nutritional stuff, but it's stress and inflammation. Inflammation is more tied to your diet. It is reversible. You can make changes, but I would have to see sometimes it is something that is embedded into your subconscious mind. So let me give you an example. This is a very, very evident, I think. It's more of a psychological example. There are people with phobias. They don't understand where the phobia came from. But if they are able to experience a particular state, that event that was traumatic, that caused the phobia, even if they have no recollection in the conscious present, the present moment of it, in that state, they're able to experience it in first person. They're able to release the program that is embedded in the subconscious mind that then is stored in your autonomic nervous system and in the functioning of whatever you're secreting onto your body that primes you for a particular condition. When the person releases that energy, because remember, thoughts, emotions, experiences, they're not abstract things, they're tangible substances. They take form, they have life of their own. And I can give you some examples later. The person, when they come back into the present, into their present conscious state of reduced awareness, the phobia is absolutely 100% gone. And so what this suggests, and other research, for example, somebody that people may know here that has done work with this in his events is Joe Dispenza. He's also seen examples like this, where you do the work to find where the source of the problem is. Sometimes it takes a skilled practitioner, somebody who's guiding you, like maybe like a psychiatrist, a hypnotherapist, somebody with experience. It could also very well be somebody in the shamanic tradition that may have experience as well. It depends on your background, your taste, and who you find and resonate with. But oftentimes I found that, at least when I've held live events, I've had people with chronic migraines. I've had people that were sterile, and these conditions have gone 100% away. I don't know if I answer your question, Minnie, but it's something we can elaborate on more.
Yeah, those were some really great points. I would just like to add a little something to it as well. Sometimes something that you may think is genetic or hereditary is not 100% genetic. As we know, there's the nature versus nurture debate. So, not only do our parents hand down their physical genes to us, they also hand down their environment, their environmental conditions, and some behaviors as well that we learn by observing them. For example, if a baby sees their parents smoking or drinking, they're going to mimic that behavior, and then some people may think, oh, it's genetics that I'm addicted to cigarettes or whatnot, or oh, it's genetics that I'm obese. But really, it's because they see their parents doing that behavior, picking up the cigarette, picking up the junk food instead of the salad, and then they mimic that behavior from what they observe. Same thing with the environment. If you're in a bad environment full of stress, low nutrition, it's not really a good family, and that can be handed down from generation to generation because they're in the same area, they have the same behaviors, and of course an environment like that's going to bring along anxiety, depression, things that some people may think are all genetic and out of their control. Oh, it's just my destiny to be depressed, it's my destiny to be anxious and fearful. But really, if you move those people out of that environment into a better, more positive one, then those conditions can go away, they can overcome it. So just something to add on there, the environment is a big role and can influence genes as well.
Yeah, 100%. I have to duck off to work, but this is really a topic that I'd be interested in staying for a whole episode on or something, because both of my parents are, very, well, quite obese and have terrible eating habits. And while I'm not, because I've seen it and tried to stray far away from it, there are definitely some times where I sort of fall into that trap and like binge eat or eat when I'm bored or in relating like or to comfort from stress or things like that I know are not my own habits, but they've been sort of ingrained in me. But now that I live away from home, I think I can 100% train myself to break away from these. But yeah, I have to go to work. Sorry guys, but I'm very interested in coming back to talk more about this.
Oh, thank you, Manny. Yeah, I have something I'll talk to you about later related to that. Definitely, it's not something we have to figure out where you are. I'm sure just by getting to know you and seeing you and stuff, you are in a certain spectrum in your energetic constitution. It's called a dosha. And what we need to do is bring that into balance by giving you the other side of the spectrum to change your foods, to give you foods that are going to bring you into the harmonious state, the middle road, the sattvic road, and it's going to actually make a big difference in you. So we'd have to like maybe do a one-to-one later, and I'm more than happy to do that for you at some point if you want to do that.
I'm super excited to do that. That sounds amazing. But I hope
Awesome.
the rest of the podcast goes really well, guys.
Thank you.
I was just curious if you wanted to go on the importance of breathing correctly and understanding how to breathe rather than mindlessly breathing.
Yeah, like I always ask this question. I always say, who knows how to breathe? Everybody raises their hand. But in fact, of the people that raised their hand, likely none of them really know how to breathe. Oftentimes when we're doing things, if we're aware, we're going to notice that we're holding our breath a lot, or that our breath becomes very erratic. And our breath is um, kind of like our fuel, but it's not our fuel in just a material sense. Note that you can live without food for, I think the record is over a month. It's a long time without food. Without water, I think you can live, I think the record is like a week or two, close to somewhere thereabouts. But you can only live without, you can be without air only for, I think the record is in the low 20s minutes. So there's a power to your breath that is often untapped. So there is a way in
Oh,
which
yeah,
you
it's
can.
spiritual. Even in the sexual realm, the breath plays a big role. There's a lot we could dive into there on that topic, man.
The so for example, I mentioned this in the in the workshop that I did for your community is that I've had athletes that before they go do their athletic performance, to the swim meet, or a pitcher is going to pitch, or a batter is going to bat. A lot of times I notice, like, even if you're going to go take a test, what is your behavior like coming in? A lot of people come in very agitated, talking, wasting a lot of energy. The mindset that you have before you go do anything is very important. Like if I'm rushing and I go into this podcast, it's just going to really throw off my ability to be clear. So I have to already start to harness my energy, and through my breath, I can start really to collect myself. And like I mentioned when we did that workshop, I could tell the difference in the sound of your voice, the power that was coming behind it, that there was a difference in you. And a lot of times people just focus on the mental aspect, but they forget that mental aspect feeds into other areas, into my physical activity, and at the same time the physical activity feeds into my mental side. So for example, if I'm doing a yoga posture of balance and I get distracted by thinking about things, I start to lose my balance. So it requires me to remain attentive and focused. That same control that I use to hold my body in place and not topple starts to translate over into control in other areas, into balance and control in other areas, including emotional inhibition, impulse control, things of that nature. So everything is really tied to how we start to dominate from the physical to the more subtle. First, dominate the body, make it a very well oiled machine. Then you're ready to dominate your breath. And once you dominate your breath, you're going to start to become aware of subtle parts of yourself that you're currently unaware of. Subtle currents that flow through you can harness and channel. Then harnessing that breath leads to being able to control your energies, what you're taking through the senses, to collect your energy, to send it to areas, let's say to higher brain centers, or to my body, to certain muscles, let's say, and eventually greater concentration, which then leads to other more deeper aspects that lead me to dominate my mind and eventually transcend my mind altogether. So you have to go like step by step, and the breath is kind of like an intermediate between the gross and the subtle. And by dominating the breath, you will slowly shift into understanding that there's more to you than just the physical side.
Absolutely beautiful, dude. Thank you for talking about that. And if you guys try it, by the way, if you go take the next, take 2 minutes and go focus on your breath and breathe, and allocate all of your energy and resources to that breath, and then use that breath to allocate your resources to something else. Go try it. Tell me that you don't feel it.
Yeah, most people don't know how to breathe or have the techniques, so I would just like to recommend a great book I read on breathing called The Oxygen Advantage. It's written by a doctor, and he goes over some very simple practical techniques for taking control of the breath and explains sort of the science behind it and certain things like the difference between breathing through your nose and your mouth. I'm sure we all heard of mouth breathers as a term. And what do you think of when you hear mouth breather? It's someone that's like stupid, not very smart, right? Well, scientifically, this is actually kind of true because when you breathe through your mouth, you do not properly absorb all the oxygen efficiently and it doesn't go to your brain how it should be. We're meant to breathe through our nose. Evolutionarily, we evolved to breathe through the nose. That's why it's split into the two nostrils. It hits the olfactory bulb, and something with like nitric acid or some chemical like that, it affects that area. So when you breathe through the nose, it activates everything properly, whereas through the mouth it doesn't. And that's why when people get out of breath, they're working out, running, doing cardio, they start breathing through their mouth, huffing, puffing, thinking it's helping them bring more air in because they feel like they're bringing more air in, but they're actually not, because even though you're bringing more air in, you're not properly absorbing it or using it efficiently. So it's best to just, even if it's hard, breathe through your nose only, even during intense exercise and training, because it'll actually keep you in a better cardio state and allow you to do more reps. So yeah, check that book out for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion, Monks in Austin. We really appreciate that book suggestion. I really look forward to expanding on this, The Power of the Breath, in a full episode. I noticed that OX Rippy came up when we were asking if anybody had any suggestions. Did you have a specific topic that you wanted to discuss eventually in the podcast, and maybe that we can touch on a little bit right now?
Hey man, yeah, I'm really glad you asked. When you guys were asking about the topics, one of the topics that really interested me, that Bebichez was actually talking about in another space, was your energy. You know, learning how to cultivate your energy, the kind of things that you can develop, the kind of skills you can develop when you're able to, you know, develop a practice of focus and develop that over the years. You know, just different levels of concentration, etc.
Yeah, interesting that you bring that up. Before I touch upon that, just to finish the breath part, monks, the workshop that I had in mind is going to be touching upon something that Austin mentioned. Breathing through the nose, you can actually either use your breathing through your nose in a specific way that I can teach to either increase the sympathetic nervous system for more agitation, more energy to get you going. Let's say in the early morning, if you're feeling sluggish, or two, to do the opposite, to activate the parasympathetic for relaxation so that you can actually stimulate the opposite. And you can kind of like, if you're feeling a little stressed out, anxious, let's say before a big event, a big performance, athletic, or I'm a speaker and I'm nervous, I'm going to go up. There's certain breathing you can do that will actually start to get you really calm, so that before you engage in whatever you're doing, you can go a little bit more calm and centered. With regards to energy, people live with a little smidgen of nothing. Most of the energy that they access is through shallow breathing. Austin was talking about, like, mouth breathing, shallow breathing, very shallow breathing. And two, the food that they eat, which is a gross form of energy, is very indirect. It's basically the energy of the sun stored in the electrons. It's very similar to the energy that powers your light in your house. It's all electricity. We live in an electrical world. Um, but there is a universal storehouse of energy that is really tied to lower centers of your body. And there are certain locks that you currently have closed that you can learn to open consciously. And the practice of advanced pranayama or breath work allows you to learn these type of gates and locks. And once you open them, people don't even know that you're doing it. You could be drawing energy and recharging while you're seated doing something. Doesn't matter where you are. And it's interesting that you brought that up, Oxrippy, because I saw a post by Eddie Kangs today, and I reached out to him, and maybe he'll respond. I don't know, but uh, about what I see, this pattern that I see in the NFT space, a lot of younger generation that just have this kind of grinding mentality. They've learned to tolerate stress, and they are seated a lot. That's a lot of compression on the back. It just generates a lot of habits that over the long haul really affect you negatively. And if I'm compounding that with snacking the wrong foods, eating unhealthy stuff, or other habits, and of course we live in a very increasingly toxic world, all and then not to mention sleep schedule, then all these things start to compound, and we start to run on empty. This is why I like to do occasional yoga nidras, because science has shown that the practice and mastering of yoga nidra can replace hours sometimes of sleep if you do it really consciously. So yeah, we can definitely hit upon that at some other point, and maybe do some guided yoga nidra at the end of a podcast. All right, anybody? I see somebody came up. I think Death Fox.
Yeah.
Hey, loving this conversation so far. Thank you for this. Just a real quick, I had a couple, but I was just curious about your opinion on one thing. I guess from an evolutionary standpoint, um, did we, like, is there a use or a reason why we developed an ego, in your opinion?
100%.
Um,
100%. Even though it's can be damaging, can be negative. People say, "Oh, don't lift with your ego. Don't. The ego is not your amigo." But the thing is, if we all had no ego at all, we wouldn't be alive right now. Human beings wouldn't have survived to this point. We would have just died, because your ego is what moves you towards goals. It's what keeps you alive and surviving. Your ego is what makes you run from a tiger or a lion trying to eat you, because you feel that fear and you want to survive. That's your ego. It keeps you alive, and that's mainly its purpose, is to keep you eating, keep you succeeding, keeping you alive, to put on your genes and continue the human race. However, of course, people get out of control, get blown up egos, and there are a lot of issues related to the ego. But the ego in itself is not inherently bad. It's actually very important and vital to our survival.
that's a great question. That's Death Fox, right? Death Fox. The uh, the ego is the imposter self. However, like Austin mentioned, is needed. If I've met very advanced masters, and the connection between their spirit and the body is very tenuous, because they don't have that ego overly dominant, but it's what holds you there. What holds them instead, and I know this from my own personal experience, from my own life, is that it's purpose. Finding a balance between getting to know your true self and allowing the ego, teaching the one that who you think you are, the embodied being with the behaviors, the habits, the duties, the one that may identify with being a father or a son or a doctor or what have you, finding a balance between that and the higher pursuit of understanding who you really are at a deeper level, but without disconnecting from the world. And what allows you to do that is having a greater sense of purpose, of service, of really putting love into action. It's an energy, it's a force that allows you as a disembodied being to want to remain in physical form, so that you can continue to do a labor of love. And therefore, finding that deeper purpose and really getting in sync with service really starts to dissolve the ego, because it becomes less about you and more about others. You shift from being passionate to being compassionate, because you start to focus more on drawing the passion out of others. And so uh, it, the ego allows you to be informed. And this is why, if you were to lose your physical body, you would not reach the pinnacle state that is called different things in different traditions, because it's a driving force that causes your consciousness to collapse into form. And I've experienced this in deep meditation, where I've been in that state of union without any idea of thought or form. I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll proceed from there. I was sitting in a parking lot waiting for my kids, who were both taking some classes. And I sat and I just closed my eyes and I started concentrating. And I went into this deep state of meditation, where now I couldn't remember my name, where I was, nothing about my current existence, nothing about being human. I just was. It's a beautiful experience that everybody should get to know. And in that state of union, all of a sudden the ego kicked in. And I started to get this inkling that started to bring me out of that state of union, and an immense fear, the greatest fear that you will ever feel, overtook me. And instantly, in a flash, I collapsed back into form. I went from formless, infinite potential, I went away from being a particle to being a wave of infinite potential, and I immediately collapsed, just like an electron would, like a particle waveform would, that has been discussed in the same quantum physics, and I immediately took form. It is in those deep states that you draw yourself out of being a particle, of feeling like you're this limited form, this limited frail ego, and you start to experience this greater self that has infinite potential and creativity. And in that state is when you realize that you are more than you ever thought possible. But the challenge is to get the ego, the imposter you that you identify with. And I would say you, I don't refer just you, I mean all of us in general, all of us struggle with this, not identifying with that reduced version and leaving the door open that there is more and that you don't cease your pursuit to experience that directly, because there is no greater teacher than direct experience.
Yeah, great point. I agree 100%. And some people may think it sounds crazy when they hear you say, oh, I was like infinite potential. They may not understand what you mean or think that's impossible. But if you look at the greats, the people that we would consider geniuses, for example, Einstein, I remember hearing that when he was thinking of his theory of relativity and gravity, he just sat in meditation into the question. He didn't start thinking with his ego consciously and start trying to write formulas or read a book or something. He just kind of meditated, fell back into relaxation, fell back into existence itself, and just let his mind wander like a child's would in a daydream around this topic, around the question, and then it just came to him when he was in that state, similar to a state you may achieve in deep meditation or doing some yoga ritual. The geniuses and the great creatives of our history are able to like connect to that infinite potential. So it definitely is very real, and you can see it throughout history that some people were able to connect to it and bring us great ideas and inventions into the world, because every physical thing, it starts as an idea. It starts on that spiritual mental realm before it becomes an actual object that we create. So great point, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Death Fox.
Thank you so much for that answer. Again, I just really can't convey my appreciation enough here. Just to kind of piggyback on what you were just saying, do you think that we discovered, like when as it pertains to meditation, breath work, yoga, did we discover that or did we invent that?
Well, you have to. The thing is that historically speaking, you can trace the origins to the Indus Valley in what currently now is like the India region. Um, but that is only because the records of humanity are scarce. We can talk about this at some other point, how we can shatter this idea that Darwin and his linear view of evolution is right. It's 100% wrong, and I can prove it. And there's a ton of evidence to support it. And therefore, we've gone through many cycles of evolution. And so, to explain the origin of yoga would require, various, maybe at least one session devoted to that. Um, but I do want to say something, which is that anybody can achieve a state of genius. It is absolutely 100% in your cards. Nobody that has ever done anything did not start where any of us were. They all had
Facts.
difficult upbringings. They may have been poor. They may have overcome a disease, or they may have overcome addiction, what have you. At the end of the day, it everything is open to you, but don't limit yourself to living a Newtonian life. The days of Newton are done. There is no cause and effect. We are now in a world where you have opened the door to being able to learn how to dissolve your physical self and enter a realm of infinite potential, where now you can start tapping into what Austin mentioned, this state of greater relaxation, changing your brainwave activity, withdrawing from the outer world, and tapping into the knowledge that you already have. Everything that you would ever need exists within you already. Your ability to be healthy all the time, to be able to find exactly why you're meant to be in this world. I think Austin mentioned earlier, talking about depression, that misalignment with your dharma, with your purpose. Why are you here? Why are you really meant to do? Oftentimes is not what we are doing. And therefore finding that it should be your sole purpose in life. Why do we focus so much on making $1 million or 2 million or more? Sometimes we get lost in this obsession for richness, for material wealth, for other things, for having the perfect relationship or the perfect looks, and we forget that many, if not all of those things, are meaningless, because at the moment that you leave your body, you will realize that you cannot take any of that with you. So instead, we need to shift our focus, not forget about the material, because we need that to be successful. I'm trying to build wealth to be able to serve more, but at the same time, I will never sacrifice the other side, which is so much more valuable, because it's what you carry with you for all eternity. And let's see, was there somebody else who had a question?
Yeah, but I think he left. And Death Fox, to add to your original question, right? Like, what purpose does the ego serve? I look at it as a form of our individuality, and we look at the golden rule, right, which is to love others as you love yourself. And if you don't have a strong sense of self, and you don't have a strong appreciation for what you bring forth into the world, and you don't love yourself, actually, how can you relate that to other people? How can you connect to other people on that level, and share your love? So within that, there is a deep sense of purpose for the ego. So thank you for bringing up that topic, and I look forward to expanding more on a full episode as we move forward. So I appreciate you, Death Fox, and thank you, Austin
Me too.
and Brian.
So I think maybe we'll start unwinding here. I want to leave you with an analogy here that I may just kind of trigger, is the following. It is okay to have pride in whatever you do. If you don't have pride in what you do, you don't allow others to see your inner talent, your inner beauty. Be like a plant that flowers and showcases its beauty. Be like the sun that is a perfect example of just shining that pride and that beauty onto others. Don't worry about what others think. Allow your real you to come out. I did a tweet recently on this, because it's important to know that everybody carries certain things with them, these that are manifested in barriers and veils that we put forth, because maybe we're afraid to really show who we really are. And I've dealt with many people of my lifetime, many young kids, and that in certain moments I see the real them come out, and I'll approach them and be like, why don't I see that person? Why do you choose to be a certain way with certain people but not with everybody? And oftentimes the reason is hurt, pain. Somebody has made them hide their light. It's like coals. We're surrounded by coals. We're a diamond, and we're surrounded by pieces of coal, and we allow other coals to take their brown gunk and just throw it at us and allow us to stick to us and not allow our light to shine through. Be brave, be resilient, and don't allow the world to beat you down. It is a dark world, but we need more people to shine. And everybody here, I have not met a single person that doesn't have that quality. Allow it to come forth.
But even the others, they are not coal. They are also diamonds, and I think that's something that's important to keep in mind, that we see the qualities that we have in ourselves also in other people, even if they appear as cold. But it's just their own ignorance that they carry within themselves, and they might think that they are cold, but in reality, we are all diamonds that we should keep in mind.
Ashaka.
Yeah, absolutely. And to build off of that, Bogey, I think that's the whole point of these conversations that we're having with Shattering the Taboo. It is shaking off that dust and refining ourselves into that more brilliant and perfect diamond from that coal state. I'm really, really excited for this. And I think that a great group of people have gathered here for the first episode, and a lot of wisdom has been shared, and a lot of love and light has shined forth, shine forth through these conversations. So I'm really, I can't even hide my excitement for how excited I am moving forward to expand on some of these topics that were brought up today. Yeah. Also, I just started up a Twitter group chat. So if you're interested in joining into that, just shoot me a DM or send an at, or just react, and I will get you in there. So
How are you, brother? Have anything you want to add or ask or comment? And I have somebody
No,
coming up here, Danya. I think he's kind of connecting still.
yeah, I apologize. I had to get in here a little bit late. I was driving. It was a really really rainy storm over here, so I had to focus. But no, I just wanted to show some love to you guys. I mean, I know Jamie and I know Bebe. I don't know Oz yet, but just love you guys. So I just wanted to come out and show some love and get whatever knowledge you got going around because I know it's worth my time.
I appreciate you for coming up, Elder. You're the man, and I really look forward to connecting when we do up in Ann Arbor. So I appreciate you for coming up, man.
Yeah, if you're not following Elder, you're doing yourself a disservice. He's a very well connected guy, super nice guy, and as always willing to help. Somebody was gonna come up, but I guess they
Yeah,
didn't. I know
I think it was
Danya.
Danye, and I think he had some trouble connecting. I sent him an invitation to speak, and also earlier Levi 8. I saw that you wanted to come up. I will extend an invitation to speak, and you're more than welcome to ask a question or focus on a topic that you would like to hear discussed in a future episode. So, with that, Danye, what's up, man? I'm glad to see you here.
Oh, glad to be here. No, y'all were talking about the Twitter update, and it didn't seem like anybody knew the answer until I requested, and then he filled you guys in. So I was just trying to spread that knowledge. I was a little bit late, but no, I look forward to. I got in at the end of this, but just from hearing the recap and everything, it sounds amazing what you guys are doing, and I look forward to being a part of it and making it when I can, and seeing you guys grow as a community and spread. I know you guys have a lot of knowledge up here, so.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who came and spoke with us, because all the topics we did discuss, they all came from the audience's questions. So you guys already are giving us a lot of great stuff to talk about, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. These are some really great topics. We barely scratched the surface on any of them, on the nature-nurture debate, on the ego, on the breath work. We barely talked about anything, so there's so much more to come in these next episodes. Super excited to give you guys more info on all of it.
It seems like this is getting to an end, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, shall we? I think this is pretty funny. We should have that as a tradition. Shall we end this with one collective Om?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So
So for anyone who requested to speak and who's a speaker, jump in if you want. Yeah.
All right, everybody, exhale completely. Now take a big inhale. By the way, if you have headphones on and you close your eyes while you do that, next time we'll do 3 ohms. Notice when we're all in sync how it amplifies and has a really a significant effect on the body and the psyche. If you meditate, if you become a master meditator and can really drown out the noise that currently prevents you from hearing it, you will hear the eternal Om that is behind the entirety of creation. Sound is a powerful creative force, and we see this in any manifestation of life. And so you can use sound, and we can obviously hold a session on this in the future, the power of sound, and of course, for example, mantras, to really have an impact on our health and our well-being. And I can give examples of that, like healing mantras, for example. And of course, if anybody here is listening, I love to always give this as an offering. If you live in the United States, or in adjoining like Canada, something like that, Mexico, if you are interested in a copy of The Art of Stress-Free Living, I'm more than happy to send you a copy for free. in it, it has a lot of these elements, some of the elements that we'll be touching upon. And of course, if you go to any of my other podcasts, the same thing. So I'm more than happy to send that. I know Jaime got a copy. I don't know if he's started reading it.
I would love
And
that
I've just
too,
sent
man.
it to a few other people.
I
So send
would
me a
love.
direct message if you're interested, and I'm more than happy to get that out to you.
Yeah, once again, thank you all for coming out to the first episode of Shattering the Taboo. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. We will be sure to let you guys know when we will be here in the space. Everyone have an awesome day. Thank you so much. Peace and love.
Peace out.
Thank you,
Oh.
everyone.
Much love, guys. Thank you.